this building here housing my office, among other things, as its signified object. Now, moreover, note that the physical structure of the particular thing appearing in your Umwelt as a sign may be subjected to idioscopic analysis, but that analysis will never reveal its sign status as such. The recognition of signs as triadic relations in contrast to related things as subjective structures is strictly semiotic. Although, of course, the semiosis of such things can well be developed ideoscopically by the social sciences, and philosophy will then be obliged to take such ideoscopic developments into account if it wishes to keep up with the reality of human experience as a whole.
Now that is amazing.
What is amazing?
That I now see what you mean in saying that a sign is what every object presupposes. You mean that every object, as an object, depends upon a network of triadic relations, and that precisely these relations constitute the being of a sign, strictly speaking. Hence, without objects, there would be isolated sensory stimuli, but no cathexis, no cognition, establishing a world of objects wherein some appear desirable, others undesirable, with still others as a matter of indifference.
Well, that's only part of it.
Part of it?
Yes. Now, every sign acting as such gives rise to further signs. Semiosis is an open process, open to the world of things on the side of the physical interactions, and open to the future on the side of objects. Thus, you need to consider further that sign vehicles or representamens, objects signified or significants, and interpretants can change places within semiosis. I mean, what is one time an object becomes another time primarily sign vehicle. What is one time interpretant becomes another time object signified, and what is one time object signified becomes another time interpretant, and so on, in an unending spiral of semiosis, the very process through which, as Peirce again puts it, symbols grow.
So signs have a kind of life within experience, indeed provide experience almost with its soul, in the Aristotelian sense, of an internal principle of growth and development. One man's object is another man's sign, and the object one time can be an interpretant the next.
Now you're getting the idea. Now be careful. Next thing you know, you'll claim to be a semiotician.
So, signs, strictly speaking, are invisible.
Yes, and inaudible and in tactile, for that matter. Now, by contrast, a sign, loosely speaking, an element occupying the position of representamen in a renvoi relation vis-a-vis significant and interpretant, can indeed be seen and pointed to or heard. A great thinker of the 20th century once remarked, perhaps without realizing the full depth of what he was saying, that animals other than humans make use of signs, but those animals do not know that there are signs. I mean, the vehicle of signs can normally be perceived as long as they are instrumental rather than formal, and can become rather interpretants or signifieds, but the signs themselves are relations, like all relations, irreducibly supersubjective, but unique too in being irreducibly triadic. Now, signs, in short, strictly speaking, can be understood but not perceived, while signs, loosely speaking, can be both perceived and understood, but when they are fully understood, it is seen that what we call signs loosely are strictly representamens, the foreground element in a given triadic relation through which alone some object is represented to some mind actually or only prospectively.
What do you mean prospectively?
You bring up a story for which the world is not yet prepared.
I do?
Indeed you do. Remember a little while ago when the subject of evolution came up?
Indeed I do, and I can tell you that I'm happy you didn't insist on going into it.
Nor will I now, except to say this. Up to the present, evolution has been understood mainly as a vis a tergo, building up from below through individual interactions, structures increasingly complex and far-flung. Now, I have a suspicion that this picture is incomplete in just the way that requires semiosis. For the action of signs is distinctive as compared with the action of things, in that the action of things takes place only among actual physical existence, whereas semiosis requires at any given time that only two out of the three related elements actually exist. In physical interactions, always the past shapes the future. But in semiotic interactions, there is an influence of the future upon the present and even upon the past as bearing on the present, so to speak. My suspicion is that whenever you have evidence of such an influence, you have semiosis, an action of signs. And since we can see from the semiosis of animal life that the very possibility of semiosis in general is rooted in the indifference of relation to its subjective ground on one side and to the physical unreality of its object on the other side, now I venture to guess that a physiosemiosis prior to and surrounding even the biosemiosis with its phytosemiosis and zoosemiosis and anthroposemiosis as parts will prove to be at the heart of what has heretofore been called, faute de mieux, evolution.
One last question, to be answered in the briefest of terms.
Go ahead.
Are you saying that to know signs in the strict sense, to thematize sign, as it were, requires a species specifically human innenwelt?
Not just so. For the imperceptible distinction between subjectivity and suprasubjectivity, between relations and related things, is at the heart of linguistic communications, so far as it does not reduce to perceptible elements. And it is the point of departure for anthroposemiosis in its difference from all zoosemiosis. All animals are semiotic beings, but only human beings can become semiotic animals. Animals, that is to say, that both use signs and know that there are signs.
I like that. The semiotic animal, a new definition for humanity as the postmodern age opens. Let us say goodbye to the res cogitans, even as Descartes said goodbye to the animal rationale, and like good semiotic animals, let us set out in search of sign vehicles which can lead us to objectified things pleasant to eat. How about that pub called the Black Lab?
Now my colleague rose. I rose with him, and together we set out in search of food. We had not far to go, for the Black Labrador is a rather good restaurant, not 2 full blocks from the place of our discussion, where my colleague's initial incredulity gave way to the conviction that, while there is yet more to be said, yet at least this much is certain even now. The sign is what every object presupposes. Now, since what is last in discovery becomes first in exposition, the last discovery of the moderns is the person of Peirce has become the first theme postmodern philosophy and intellectual culture must come to terms with, since it defines them. It's not a bad discovery, even if compared to the late Latins it was only a rediscovery. Small wonder that all thought being in signs, the objective universe is perfused with them. It remains to see if even the physical universe may not, as giving rise to us, consist exclusively of signs. But after lunch.